There's a particular kind of arrogance that comes from people who think they understand everything about your life based on surface observations. My family had always been that way. My name is Dr. Samantha Reyes and I'm 30 years old. For the past 6 years, I've worked as a senior research coordinator with the Department of Energy's National Nuclear Security Administration. Specifically, I manage classified research facilities and coordinate with the U.S. Geological Survey on seismic monitoring stations critical to nuclear test detection and earthquake early warning systems. Most people have never heard of my specific division. My family certainly hadn't bothered to understand it. Samantha works for the government doing environmental stuff. My mother would explain dismissively at family gatherings. Something with geology and sensors. Very technical and boring. My father was even less interested. She measures earthquake data or something. Makes maybe $70,000 a year staring at computers in some federal building. My sister Ashley, 28 and working in marketing, was actively contemptuous. Sam spends her days looking at rocks and printouts. Meanwhile, I just landed a 6-figure account with a major tech company. But sure, Sam's government job is stable. What they didn't know, what they couldn't know due to the classified nature of my work, was that I held AQ clearance, the Department of Energy's equivalent to top secret. My work involved managing research sites that monitored seismic activity related to nuclear weapons testing, both domestic legacy sites and foreign threats. The empty land plot, they thought I'd inherited from my grandfather and was wasting by leaving undeveloped? That wasn't empty land. That was Site 7 Tango, a restricted federal research facility containing highly sensitive seismic monitoring equipment, radiation detection systems, and classified underground sensors that fed data directly to nuclear security operations at Los Alamos and Lawrence Livermore National Laboratories. The land deed was in my name as part of a DOE security protocol, using private ownership of strategic locations to obscure the government's actual interest in the site. It looked like inherited family property. It was actually a critical node in America's nuclear security infrastructure. The property had been my grandfather's originally. He'd worked for the Atomic Energy Commission in the 1960s and had donated the land for research purposes before his death. The deed had been transferred to me 6 years ago when I joined NSA, making me the legal owner while DOE maintained operational control through a classified use agreement. I couldn't explain any of this to my family. The existence of Site 7 Tango was classified. The research conducted there was classified. Even acknowledging that seismic monitoring equipment existed on the property would violate security protocols. So when my family asked why I was wasting a 40-acre plot in rural Nevada by leaving it empty, I'd simply said it was reserved for environmental research and changed the subject. That hadn't stopped them from complaining about it for 6 years. You're sitting on potentially valuable land, Dad would say at every holiday gathering. That area is developing. You could sell it for at least $200,000, maybe more. It's not for sale, I'd respond calmly. Why not? You never even visit it. You're not using it. It's just sitting there. It's being used for research purposes. What research? There's nothing there. Ashley drove by it last year. She said it's just empty desert with a few random equipment boxes. Those random equipment boxes were actually $4.5 million worth of classified seismic monitoring systems connected to nuclear security operations. But I couldn't say that. The research is ongoing, I'd say. The property isn't available for sale. You're being stubborn, Mom would add. Just like your grandfather. He never wanted to develop that land either. Now you're making the same mistake. It's my property. My decision. Such a waste, Ashley would mutter. I could buy a house with that money. But Sam wants to hold on to empty desert for sentimental reasons. I'd learned to ignore them. My work was important. The property was critical to national security. My family's opinions about wasted opportunities were irrelevant. Until they decided to take matters into their own hands. The first indication came via text message on a Thursday morning. I was at my office in Washington, D.C., reviewing seismic data from a suspected North Korean nuclear test, when my phone buzzed. Dad, great news. We found a buyer for your Nevada land. Closing next week. You'll get $240,000. I stared at the message, certain I was misreading it. I called him immediately. Dad, what are you talking about? What buyer? For your empty land in Nevada. He sounded pleased with himself. We've been telling you for years to sell it. You never listened. So we took initiative. Found a developer interested in the area. He's paying $240,000 cash. Closing is Tuesday. You can't sell that property. It's not for sale. Of course it is. You own it but you never use it. We're helping you finally make it useful. The developer wants to build a small resort community. Perfect use for that location. Dad, that property is restricted. It cannot be sold. Restricted? Samantha, it's empty desert. There's nothing there. We had it appraised. It's just land. Who did you talk to about this? Who's the buyer? Developer named Robert Chin. Friend of a friend. He specializes in desert property development. Very professional. And how exactly are you planning to sell property that's deeded in my name? Silence. Well, Dad said slowly, we have power of attorney. From when you were in grad school and needed someone to handle paperwork while you were doing field work. That power of attorney had been for a specific 6-month period 8 years ago. It had expired. That power of attorney is no longer valid, I said. You can't sell my property. Actually, our lawyer says we can. Since you gave us authority once and since you're not actively using the property, we have grounds to act in your financial best interest. Your lawyer is wrong. And Dad, that property is federal research land. You cannot sell it. Federal research land? Samantha, there's nothing federal about it. It's in your name. We checked the deed. The deed is in my name as part of a security protocol. The property is used for classified research operations. It's restricted from sale or development. Classified research? He laughed. You're being dramatic. There's nothing classified about empty desert with a couple of weather sensors. Those weren't weather sensors. They were seismic monitors connected to nuclear security systems. Dad, I need you to stop this sale immediately. You're attempting to sell restricted federal property. That's a crime. It's not federal property, it's your property. And we're helping you get fair market value for it instead of letting it sit there wasting. Who else knows about this sale? Just family. Your mother, Ashley, and me. And Chin, the developer. And his investment group. Why? My blood ran cold. Multiple parties were involved in an attempted sale of classified federal property. Dad, do not proceed with this sale. I'm going to handle this through official channels. If you complete this transaction, you'll be committing federal crimes. Federal crimes? He scoffed. Samantha, you're overreacting. It's a simple real estate transaction. Stop being dramatic and just accept that we're helping you make smart financial decisions. I'm not being dramatic. I'm trying to prevent you from going to federal prison. Prison? For selling your unused land? You've been working for the government too long. You've forgotten how the real world works. Dad. The closing is Tuesday, he interrupted. The money will be deposited in your account. You can thank us later. He hung up. I sat at my desk, heart pounding, mind racing through the implications. My family was attempting to sell a classified federal research site to unknown developers. They'd forged power of attorney documents. They'd shared information about the property with multiple parties. They'd potentially exposed the existence of Site 7 Tango to civilians. This wasn't just a crime. This was a national security breach. I immediately called my supervisor, Dr. Richard Martinez, Deputy Director of NNSA Research Operations. Dr. Martinez, we have a situation. Someone is attempting to sell Site 7 Tango. What? That's impossible. The property is restricted. The deed is in my name as part of security protocols. My family has accessed that deed and initiated a sale to a private developer. Closing is scheduled for Tuesday. Jesus Christ, Samantha. How did this happen? My family thinks it's unused inherited land. They don't understand it's a federal facility. They're claiming expired power of attorney and attempting to complete the transaction without my authorization. Who's the buyer? Developer named Robert Chin. Claims to specialize in desert property development. Planning to build a resort community on the site. A resort community on top of classified seismic monitoring equipment and radiation detectors. This gets worse the more you explain. I know. I need immediate intervention. Legal injunction probably. And investigation into who this Chin person is and how he found out about the property. Agreed. I'm looping in DOE security and FBI right now. Do not contact your family again until we have a coordinated response. This is now a federal investigation. Understood. Samantha, you know what this means. If your family completes this sale, if they transfer ownership of federal property to unauthorized parties, they'll face federal charges. I know. Can you handle that? These are your parents we're talking about. These are people attempting to sell classified federal property. I'll handle it professionally. Good. Stay by your phone. This is going to move fast. The next 3 hours were a blur of conference calls. DOE Security, FBI Counterintelligence, U.S. Marshals Service, Department of Justice. Everyone agreed. The sale had to be stopped immediately, the property had to be secured, and everyone involved had to be investigated. Dr. Reyes, FBI Special Agent Thomas Crawford said during the joint briefing, "We need to understand how this Robert Chin knew about this property. Site 7 Tango's location is classified. The fact that someone specifically targeted it for purchase raises serious counterintelligence concerns." You think Chin is a foreign intelligence asset? I asked. We think it's suspicious that a developer suddenly wants to buy land that happens to contain classified monitoring equipment. We're running background checks now. His financial connections, his associates, his travel history, everything. What about my family? They're subjects in this investigation too. We need to know if they were approached by Chin or if they initiated contact. We need to know what information they've shared about the property. And we need to know if they're acting under their own volition or if they've been manipulated. They initiated contact, I said. My father mentioned posting about the property somewhere. Chin responded quickly. Posted where? He didn't say. Some community board or real estate forum, probably. So they advertised the sale of classified federal property on a public forum. Crawford shook his head. This gets worse every minute. Dr. Martinez spoke up. What's our timeline? Sale is scheduled for Tuesday. Today is Thursday. We have 5 days to stop this, secure the property and neutralize any threats. Crawford pulled up a map. The property is in rural Nevada, about 40 miles from any major population center. If Chen's group is planning site access before closing, we need eyes on the location immediately. Site 7 Tango has perimeter security, I said. Motion sensors, cameras, automatic alerts if anyone breaches the boundary. Good. We'll coordinate with DOE security to monitor those systems. If anyone approaches the property before Tuesday, we'll know immediately. What about my family? I asked. U.S. Marshals will serve them with cease and desist orders this afternoon. They'll be informed that any further attempts to sell the property will result in immediate arrest for unauthorized sale of federal property, fraud, and potential espionage charges. Espionage. If Chin turns out to be a foreign intelligence asset and if your family has been sharing information about classified sites, yes. Espionage charges are possible. I felt sick. Crawford noticed. Dr. Reyes, I understand this is difficult. But your family's ignorance doesn't eliminate the severity of what they've done. They attempted to sell classified federal property. They've potentially exposed sensitive installations. They've committed fraud by claiming authority they don't have. These are serious federal crimes. I know. Can you remain objective during this investigation? Yes. My family's feelings don't outweigh national security. Good answer. By late afternoon, U.S. Marshals were on their way to my parents' house in Phoenix. I wasn't there, but I was on a conference call when they arrived. Federal agents at the door, the lead marshal reported via radio. 4 subjects present. 2 parents, 1 adult daughter, and unknown male. Unknown male. Crawford said sharply. Who's the 4th person? Stand by. Pause. Subject identifies as Robert Chin, the property buyer. Everyone in our conference room went silent. Chin is at the house? I said. At my parents' house right now? Affirmative. Appears to be present for pre-closing arrangements. Detain him, Crawford ordered. Detain all of them. This is now an active counterintelligence operation. Through the radio I could hear confusion. Dad's voice. What's happening? We have a legal real estate closing. Sir, step back. U.S. Marshals Service. You are being detained pending investigation of unauthorized sale of federal property. Federal property? This is my daughter's land. Sir, this property is a restricted federal research site. You are attempting to sell classified government installations. You need to stop talking and comply with our instructions. Classified? That's ridiculous. It's empty desert. Sir, final warning. Hands where we can see them. You can't arrest us for selling land. We have power of attorney. That power of attorney is expired and invalid. You are committing fraud and potentially espionage. You will be detained. I heard my mother crying. Ashley shouting about lawyers. Chin speaking rapidly in what sounded like Mandarin. Did Chin just speak Chinese? Crawford said sharply. The marshal confirmed. Affirmative. Subject Chin is on his phone speaking what sounds like Mandarin Chinese. Moving to secure his phone now. Do it. And separate all subjects. No communication between them. Copy that. The next hour was chaos. Chen's phone revealed communications with contacts in Beijing. His financial records showed accounts in 3 countries. His travel history included multiple trips to China, Russia, and North Korea. He's a foreign intelligence asset, Crawford said, reviewing the initial findings. Definitely Chinese MSS, possibly with connections to other services. He's been systematically targeting properties near sensitive U.S. installations. How many properties? Dr. Martinez asked. At least 7 that we've identified so far. Rural land near military bases, research facilities, nuclear sites. He poses as a legitimate developer, offers quick cash sales and gains access to strategic locations. And my family led him directly to a classified nuclear security monitoring station, I said quietly. They did. Unknowingly probably, but yes. What happens now? Chen will be charged with espionage, fraud, attempted theft of government property, and probably a dozen other federal crimes. He's looking at life in prison. And my family? Crawford hesitated. That's complicated. They clearly didn't know they were dealing with a foreign agent. They genuinely believed they were helping you with a real estate transaction. But they did attempt to sell federal property using fraudulent authority. They did share information about classified installations. They did facilitate Chen's access to sensitive information. So they'll face charges. Almost certainly. The question is how severe. If we can prove they were manipulated by Chen, if we can show they acted out of ignorance rather than malice, the charges might be reduced. But they will face consequences. I understand. My phone rang. Dad calling from federal detention. I answered on speaker. Samantha, what the hell is happening? They're saying we committed espionage. That's insane. Dad, you tried to sell a classified federal research facility to a Chinese intelligence agent. I what? Chin said he was a developer. Chin is a spy. He targets properties near sensitive U.S. installations. You led him directly to one of our most critical nuclear security monitoring sites. Nuclear security? Samantha, there's nothing nuclear about empty desert. Site 7 Tango contains seismic monitoring equipment, radiation detectors, and underground sensors that feed data directly to Los Alamos and Livermore. It's part of our nuclear test detection network. You just tried to sell it to Chinese intelligence. Silence. You never said it was nuclear, Dad finally whispered. Because it's classified. I couldn't tell you. That's why I kept saying it was restricted research property. That's why I told you it wasn't for sale. But you didn't listen. We were trying to help you make money. You were trying to make financial decisions about property you didn't understand using authority you didn't have. And now you're in federal custody facing espionage charges. But we didn't know. Ignorance doesn't eliminate the crime, Dad. You attempted to sell federal property. You shared information about classified installations with a foreign agent. You forged power of attorney documents. Those are federal crimes. We're going to prison, he said, voice breaking. Probably. You're just going to let that happen? You're not going to help us. Help you how, Dad? By lying to federal investigators? By claiming you had authorization you didn't have? By pretending you didn't facilitate access to classified sites? I can't do any of that. And even if I could, I wouldn't. We're your family. You're criminals who compromised national security because you wanted quick money from property you had no right to sell. Samantha, please. I have to go, Dad. Federal agents need my cooperation with this investigation. I suggest you get a lawyer. A very good one who specializes in national security cases. I hung up. Dr. Martinez looked at me with something like sympathy. That was harsh. That was honest. They endangered national security. They facilitated foreign intelligence access to critical infrastructure. They deserve whatever consequences follow. Still, they're your parents. They're adults who made catastrophically bad decisions. Being my parents doesn't change that. The investigation expanded rapidly. FBI discovered that Chin had been running the property acquisition operation for 3 years, successfully purchasing 11 properties near sensitive installations. Site 7 Tango would have been his 12th. He's been building an intelligence network, Crawford explained during a briefing. Properties near military bases where he can monitor movements. Land near communications facilities where he can intercept signals. Locations near nuclear sites where he can track security operations. Your family's property was especially valuable because of the seismic equipment. He could have monitored our nuclear test detection capabilities. Could have, I noted. But didn't. Only because you stopped it. If this sale had gone through, if Chin had gained access to that equipment. Crawford shook his head. This could have been a catastrophic intelligence failure. What's the damage assessment? We're still evaluating. Chin had access to information about 11 other properties. We're securing all of them, investigating what he learned, determining what intelligence he might have passed to Beijing. It's going to take months. And my family? They're cooperating now. Providing information about their contacts with Chin, explaining how the sale was arranged, admitting they had no actual authority to sell the property. Crawford paused. The U.S. attorney is considering charges of fraud, attempted theft of government property and negligent security breach. Not espionage? We can't prove they knowingly worked with a foreign agent. They were useful idiots, not willing collaborators. That matters for charging decisions. How much prison time? For fraud and attempted theft? Maybe 3 to 5 years. Less if they cooperate fully and accept plea agreements. 3 to 5 years. My parents in federal prison because they thought they were helping me with a real estate transaction. They'll take the plea, I said. They're not sophisticated criminals. They'll want to minimize their sentences. Probably. And Dr. Reyes? For what it's worth, you did the right thing. You reported the threat immediately. You cooperated with the investigation. You prevented a serious intelligence breach. That matters. Tell that to my family when they're in prison. Your family put themselves in prison. You just documented it. The preliminary hearings happened 3 weeks later. Dad, Mom, and Ashley all appeared in federal court, represented by public defenders, looking exhausted and terrified. Chin appeared separately in shackles, charged with espionage, fraud, conspiracy, and attempted theft of government property. His charges carried potential life sentences. My family's charges were red: fraud, attempted unauthorized sale of federal property, negligent security breach. Each charge carried 5 to 10 years maximum. The prosecutor offered plea agreements, 3 years each in exchange for full cooperation and admission of guilt. All 3 accepted immediately. Do you understand, Judge Sarah Mitchell asked my father, that you are pleading guilty to attempting to sell federal property without authorization? Yes, Your Honor, Dad said quietly. And do you understand that this property was a classified research facility containing sensitive national security equipment? I do now, Your Honor. I didn't understand that when I attempted the sale. Because you didn't ask. Because you assumed you knew what the property was based on superficial observation. Because you wanted money more than you wanted truth. Yes, Your Honor. Your ignorance is not a defense, Mr. Reyes. It's an aggravating factor. You had access to someone with security clearances and classified information, your own daughter, and you never bothered to verify your assumptions with her. She told us not to sell it, Dad admitted. She said it was restricted. I thought she was being paranoid. She was being professional. She was protecting national security information she couldn't share. And you interpreted that as paranoia and proceeded anyway. Judge Mitchell looked stern. You are fortunate the U.S. attorney accepted a plea agreement. If this had gone to trial, you could have faced 20 years. I understand, Your Honor. I hope you do. I hope you spend your 3 years in federal prison understanding that federal property is federal property, that security classifications exist for reasons, and that your daughter was right about everything. Dad said nothing. The sentencing was identical for all three. 3 years federal prison, $100,000 restitution each, 5 years supervised release afterward. Ashley cried through the entire proceeding. Mom looked broken. Dad just stared at the floor. I sat in the back of the courtroom expressionless. After sentencing, Ashley's lawyer approached me in the hallway. Dr. Reyes, my client would like to speak with you before she's transferred to the federal facility. I don't have anything to say to her. She wants to apologize. Apologies don't eliminate federal convictions. She's your sister. She's about to spend 3 years in prison. 5 minutes. I almost refused. Almost walked away. Almost protected myself from the inevitable emotional manipulation. But I agreed. Ashley looked 10 years older than she had 3 weeks ago. The smugness was gone. The contempt had vanished. She just looked scared. Sam, she said, voice small, I'm so sorry. I never understood what you actually did. I never understood why that land mattered. I thought, she stopped. I thought you were wasting an opportunity. I thought we were helping you. You thought you knew better than me about my own property and my own career, I corrected. You assumed my work was unimportant because you didn't understand it. You decided to make decisions for me without my consent. That's not helping. That's arrogance. I know that now. Do you actually understand that you tried to sell a nuclear security monitoring station to Chinese intelligence? Do you grasp the scale of what you almost did? The FBI explained it. They showed me what Chin was really doing. Who he was really working for. Tears ran down her face. I could have helped China monitor our nuclear defenses. Because I thought I was smarter than my boring government employee sister. Yes. You could have. How do you live with that? Knowing your family almost caused a national security disaster. I live with it by remembering that I did my job. I reported the threat. I cooperated with investigators. I prevented the breach. Your choices are not my responsibility. But we're going to prison. You committed federal crimes. Prison is the appropriate consequence. You really won't forgive us. Forgiveness is irrelevant. You broke federal law. You endangered national security. You facilitated foreign intelligence operations. Whether I forgive you doesn't change any of those facts. So that's it. We serve our time and you just move on with your life. Yes. That's exactly what happens. You serve your sentences. You pay your restitution. You complete your supervised release. And I continue doing my job protecting the installations you tried to sell. We're still family, Ashley said desperately. We're still related, I corrected. Family implies trust, respect, consideration. You demonstrated none of those things. You're people I'm related to who committed federal crimes. That's different from family. Sam, please. I have to go. Federal agents are waiting for my continued cooperation with the Chin investigation. I suggest you focus on preparing for your incarceration rather than seeking absolution you haven't earned. I walked away. 3 years later, my parents were released from federal prison. Ashley was released 6 months after them. They moved to a different state. We don't speak. Chin was convicted on all charges and sentenced to life in federal prison without possibility of parole. His intelligence network was completely dismantled. The 11 properties he'd acquired were secured and the equipment was moved. I'm now the director of site security for NNSA's classified research facilities. My work has expanded to protecting installations across 7 states. My security clearance is the highest possible. The property in Nevada, Site 7 Tango, is still deeded in my name. But now it has additional security measures, enhanced monitoring and regular inspections. It will never be vulnerable to attempted sale again. I received a commendation from the Secretary of Energy for exceptional service in protecting critical national security infrastructure and preventing foreign intelligence breaches. The commendation doesn't mention that the threat came from my own family. That my parents tried to sell classified federal property for $240,000. That my sister thought she was helping me make smart financial decisions. Some details are better left out of official records. But I remember. I remember Dad's voice announcing proudly that they'd sold my empty land. Mom smiling about finally making it useful. Ashley's years of contempt for my boring government job. I remember calling my supervisor and saying calmly, Unauthorized sale of restricted property. I remember the federal marshals arriving, the investigations expanding, the espionage charges, the guilty pleas. I remember all of it. And I sleep well at night knowing I did the right thing. I protected national security. I stopped a foreign intelligence operation. I demonstrated that no one, not even family, gets to compromise classified installations because they want quick money. My family thought I was wasting inherited desert land that could have been worth $240,000. They were actually trying to sell a $4.5 million classified nuclear security monitoring facility to Chinese intelligence. Assumptions about property you don't understand are dangerous. My family learned that lesson in federal prison. And I learned that protecting national security sometimes means watching your own family face federal consequences. That's not being cold. That's being a federal agent responsible for critical infrastructure. There's a difference. One I'm proud to maintain. Every single day.